I haven't bought the vest though. That's the only problem. I haven't bought it. I have to buy it. When I think of Newfoundland, I think of the people. I think of fishing. I think of the seaside towns, those picturesque houses, the different colors. I think of moose, the icebergs. I think of lobster, crab. I think of the wildlife, the puffins, the whales, the enormous impact of the wilderness on the province itself and what it is to be an island amongst a nation of mainlanders. Newfoundland's always had a fond place in my heart. It's the first place where I went for a site visit when I became an investor full time. The flight from Toronto to St. John's is around 3 hours, and it was my first time flying into St. John's. The previous and the first time that I went in 2017, I actually flew into Deer Lake, and oddly enough, even though it's closer to Toronto, it's about the same flight distance. But what it is St. John's puts us in a better spot to access central Newfoundland and the projects that we're going to see. Okay, we just landed in St. John's, Newfoundland. We're here for two main reasons. First, I'm completing my Prospector's course with a practicum in the field. After completing the practicum, I'll be a certified Newfoundland prospector. I think most people's view on what a prospector is, reverts back to that old timer type of picture in their mind of this old guy with a big curly mustache, with a wide brimmed hat, gold panning in a river somewhere up north. And today that still is sort of how it is, but it's a wide range of people that are today's modern prospector. They do it from both behind a desktop on a computer, and they're out in the field. You can never get away from getting out there, breaking rocks yourself and walking the land and seeing what you can find. So the modern prospector can be people like me, and that is very much where the future is, and prospecting will be an integral part of the exploration process from now until the end of time. We are here to visit Altius Minerals and their projects, at least one project in central Newfoundland. We're going to learn about prospect generation, we're going to learn about the royalty model, and personally why I think it is probably the best way, the lowest risk way to play the resource sector. Altius Minerals is essentially the modern prospectors put into motion. They use both desktop analysis to break down where they want to do some boots on the ground prospecting. They get out there, they stake their own ground, and then they do some basic exploration work to get that project up to snuff and to be able to sell their thesis of why this is prospective ground to either senior mining companies or to other juniors. And in that process, they're able to exchange these projects of high potential for cash, for equity positions, and probably the most important part is a royalty. And a royalty is a percentage of future revenues if that project were to make a discovery and become a mine in the future. And obviously Altius has executed so wonderfully that they are now producing royalties that are streaming income to them and making them into the billion-dollar company they are today. The drive from St. John's into Grand Falls is around 4.5, 5 hours. I'd never been to Grand Falls, and really the biggest reason why we were stopping in Grand Falls was to see Dave Evans. Dave Evans is a geologist, and he's actually the geologist I spent the most time with on my first site visit to Newfoundland. And so Grand Falls, while I didn't know anything about it, I was highly motivated to stay there and to see Dave, and that was very meaningful for me to reconnect with him.
Oh, Lawrence, Ryan, good to see you, buddy. Mr. Evans, how you doing, bro?
So in exploration, is it one of those things where you can do all the right things and come up shorthanded?
Oh, yes.
In terms of missing your targets and
Oh, yes.
yeah.
It's all crapshoot.
So like, has that truly been a feast or famine when it comes to exploration? Is that what you've experienced?
I've been lucky because I've managed to work right through it. But,
Yeah.
Certainly it is feast or famine for
Yeah.
a lot of people. It's only a geological model
Yeah.
that you're targeting, right? And only one in several thousand will probably become an advanced project into a mine. Right?
Right. What do you think about the business model? It's sort of like what Altius does in their organic generation of royalties through Prospector project generation. It seems to me like a pretty prudent way to kind of do exploration.
Well, it's really worked well here in Newfoundland.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of our exploration boom periods are the result of Altius's work.
Right.
It generated the interest,
Yeah.
and people sort of watched what Altius was doing, and then followed along.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then a few years back, Altius got out of the exploration business,
Yeah.
and people were kind of worried because we lost that exploration generator here.
Yeah.
But anyway, they came full cycle, and now they're.
Altius Minerals is the prime example of a prospect generator that made it into a major mining company. They're $1 billion market cap. They've grown their company organic from single-digit $1 billion market cap to $1 billion, and they've done that in the span of the last 24ish years. Day 2 started early. At the crack of dawn, we drove into Badger to pick up Chad Wells, who is the corporate development guy for Altius, and really the person that I've had the most contact with and relationship with over the last 8 years since I've been doing this. So when did you start with Altius? Are you right from the beginning?
Look, man, it's what makes Altius truly unique in this business is that it was founded at Memorial University.
Yeah.
Brian Dalton, again, our CEO, founder of the business. Myself, him, Lawrence, Lawrence being our VP exploration, and Rod Smith, our chief geo. We were all doing geology together. And Brian was at that stage just such an entrepreneurial guy, whereas us other guys, we were there basically just as students, learning about geology. But we learned about Voisey's Bay and the potential, the staking rush, and all the stock market euphoria that comes with that sort of thing. We basically got plugged into it from Brian.
Voisey's Bay was a major discovery, not just for Canada or the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, but on a world scale. It was a high-grade nickel discovery, and the fact that Altius was able to get a royalty on that mining operation was a huge part of why they've been able to reach the point that they have in terms of market cap and revenue. Voisey's Bay is one of those discoveries that is a once in a lifetime for most exploration geologists, and especially when you put that on the world scale. And so its impact and still today reverberates throughout the province and throughout the country, and so it is a huge deal.
It created a unique breed of a, I'll call it our particular 2 to 3 year group at Memorial, that there was a lot of entrepreneurial awareness there. There was a lot of stock market awareness, which is normally not something you see in a bunch of geology students.
Yeah.
Now it's evolved over time for sure. But what came through all that is, Brian had some successes from a private expediting type, providing services to exploration companies in Voisey's Bay. Through that experience of interacting with junior mining companies, primarily based in Vancouver at the time,
Yeah.
he realized that, my gosh, if these guys can do it, I think I could do this with some choice guys.
Yeah.
And maybe even do it better, right? So I believe that's the big success story of Altius is the unique culture of the people, the management group,
100%.
that we are able to work better than most because we have the confidence in we know the skill sets of the individuals, we know the personalities of the people, and we know how to we know how to work that. Right? A lot of times in bigger companies, new companies, you've got guys being hired on a resume, right?
Yeah.
And that can be good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
Just say it as this. Whereas in our case, it's more of a life resume.
Yeah.
So we as a company, we run it with deep integrity and whatnot, is what I think all of us are as a group. And we enjoy each other's company so much today as we did when we started. It's the second project in our history that we actually
Road access is probably one of the most underestimated advantages to any exploration property you're going to find, whether it's in Newfoundland, BC, Ontario. These logging roads that have been long established are huge advantages in terms of cost. When you have to helicopter in your exploration team, your drills, and move your drills from site to site by helicopter, you have a $1 million drill program that turns into a $3 million drill program. And when cash is as tight as it is, you need to save money wherever you can. So it cannot be underestimated how important logging roads are to the exploration business, and in particular to Newfoundland. Once we got to Roebucks, we parked at the entrance and made our way down the forest road down to the boulder that they had found with the VMS mineralization.
So this would be a prospector's dream.
Yeah.
The only thing better than finding this is finding this in outcrop. And so these are boulders that were dug up here. This road was put in probably 20 plus years ago, and exploration here in this area, there's some stuff that goes back to the 60s, regional stuff. And then in the 90s and early 2000s, there was some more advanced exploration here that included drilling, some very short drill holes. And that drilling would have happened down the road here, just to the north of us. And they were drilling based on interesting looking rocks. There's some outcrop exposure down here. So there's some interesting looking rocks, some alteration that would indicate the potential for massive sulfides. There's anomalous soils here with copper and zinc. There's anomalous metals in those outcrops as well. And there's some geophysics that have been done, so they have conductors here that indicate, all those things are good indicators for massive sulfide. Those are all the things you want to see.
The discovery of the boulder at Roebucks is the prime example of what you want to see from an exploration property. You want to see a physical example of what the mineralization potentially could be. In terms of Roebucks, this massive sulfide boulder has grades through the roof. And if you can find more of it, then you have the potential for a future mine. And so from a prospector or an exploration or an investor's point of view, these boulders, any type of geochemical feature which shows the mineralization is actually there, is exactly what you want to see. So when you do find it, you make a big deal about it, and you wave your arms until someone hears you.
And so now all of a sudden you had all these positive indicators, anomalous geochemistry in the rocks, alteration, anomalous soil geochemistry. All the indicators were there. And so now all of a sudden on top of that, what you have is evidence that there's somewhere in that system along here, in that zone, that there are massive sulfides being plucked out of this. These were plucked out by glaciers and pushed some distance. We don't think that distance is kilometers. We think it's hundreds of meters. And so we're quite confident that these boulders, and you can see, and we'll look at some of this in a bit more detail. You can see that these are really chalcopyrite-rich rocks. These things are 12 to 16% copper. So, and it's in the form of chalcopyrite. Chalcopyrite is about 30% copper. So if it's 16% copper, it's 45, 50% chalcopyrite. Half of the sulfide in here is copper mineralization.
Massive sulfide simply refers to the concentration or percentage of sulfide minerals within a piece of rock. The higher that percentage, they get classified as massive. I don't know the exact percentages off my head, but there's massive, there's an intermediate, and then a lower end of the scale. So obviously being on the massive side is important, as grade or the amount of mineral is definitely a huge part of what makes an economic mine in the future.
We're right in the middle of Newfoundland here, right in the smack dab middle, and this would have been the center of the ice sheet. And so when you're in the middle of the ice sheet, as opposed to out on the edges where the flow was more linear, then you can have multiple sort of directions. It can change. It can be a little more complicated, but we know that there's two directions here, and one is coming from this way and one is coming from that way. So whatever the direction is, it's somewhere along here. That's up ice, and we know it's not too far. So it's again it's an extremely, you know, it's the best predictor you can possibly get that there's massive sulfide somewhere in that belt of rocks running through the property. So that's the reason I brought them.
Safety first.
All right, here we go. So get a fresh surface on there.
Knowing where to start as a prospector is probably more than half of the equation. And that comes with the education that you have in terms of geological features, the different types of rocks, and most importantly, where the fault structures are. Typically, in my experience, most of the major deposits are found along deep tapping faults. And so as a prospector, these are the areas that you're going to want to find. And the government data set will show you where these large fault structures are. And so that is where you basically start and see if you can find a little plot of land that you can actually claim that hasn't been claimed. It's becoming harder and harder, but that's the basis of it. And really, the most successful prospectors are the ones that have the best baseline knowledge or make the best choice from the beginning to narrow down their search, because even when you do make that good choice, it still takes a lot of time and money to execute. We spent the entire morning at Roebucks, and finally it was time to have lunch. So we headed back to Beothic Lake, which is set right alongside Millertown. So we drove back up around an hour and had a shore lunch. Moose burgers that Lawrence had made, I believe with the moose that Chad had shot the prior season. So not only they were good, but it was a nice connection to the province itself, having the local moose. Newfoundland is a premier jurisdiction for mining investment for, I think, a few reasons. I think first and foremost, it's in the history of the province itself. Buckins drove the economics of the province, especially after the fishing was closed. It was a major source of income for a huge portion of the people. Secondly, I think being an island province, I think you're almost forced in some ways to adopt industries such as this. But it's that much easier when it's such an integral part of your history. And so that's why I think mining investment is going to only grow as we move along here, both out of necessity and because it's just part of the culture. After lunch, we are headed to the north side of Beothic Lake, which takes us back out through Millertown, around the end and towards the historic town of Buckins.
So back in the day, this was a bustling town.
Buckins is an amazing story for Newfoundland as a province and for the people of Central. It was a high-grade VMS deposit that was found undercover, I believe, by a Swedish explorationist, and really set the stage for Central Newfoundland's development, in particular Buckins itself, which still exists today, even though the mine isn't in operation again. But its high-grade nature and the amount of tonnage that they were able to extract from there, propelled Central Newfoundland for a very long time. Looking out to the future, there's still a lot of prospects in that area. Again, undercover and probably fairly deep, these VMS deposits can be. But with their high-grade nature, you're not necessarily looking at this massive ore body. It'll probably be quite small, but the high grade is what makes it economic and what makes it attractive for companies to explore for. Buckins really is a tale of two cities. You have what it was 50 years ago, and you have what it is today. I think what it shows you is not only the impact, the wealth that can be brought to a rural part of any province, but it also shows you what happens with the finite life of a mining operation. I would say that Buckens is really a shadow of what it used to be. And there is still people that obviously call it their home, but the impact of mining leaving and being done had a major impact. And I hope that that area can once again reach its top level with a new discovery and, of course, a new mining operation. Unfortunately, mining is a cyclical business. It has ups and downs, and this is mostly in relation to metal pricing. Not only do you have the finite life of a mining operation, but you also have its effect or its economics affected by the metal price. Invariably, you can run out of ore, or you can be stagnated because the metal price isn't high enough for you to produce. So you have two things going on. At some point, you do run out of ore, though, and unless the metal price is high enough to incentivize more exploration and development, you're not going to see it. Second to that, you also need the environment, whether this be the provincial governments or the federal governments, need to have the right incentives in place in terms of taxing and royalties and these sorts of things that aren't too intrusive on the business and its economics. So in my view, that is how you can't necessarily prevent it, but you can reduce the impact of a mine running out of ore, is to keep everything in place to keep those companies exploring and try to expand what they already have. We spent the final day of the trip in St. John's. We took the opportunity in the morning to visit Altius's headquarters and talk to Carol Seymour, who is an exploration geologist. So you guys come up with a geological idea, and you look at Newfoundland, for example.
Yep.
Okay, you want to find an area that suits it. You stake it. So what's the process after that? You stake the land. You're going to go out there. What do you do?
Yeah, so sometimes we don't even get to the point of staking the land. We come up with a concept and we might go check it out in the field just to kind of test to see if our theories are correct, right? So we might spend a couple weeks in the field checking out the rocks, doing a bit of mapping, maybe rock sampling, seeing if our theory is actually correct. Then we may go stake the claims. Once we stake the claims, then there's work that needs to be done there. So depending on the project, that could be a soil survey, like if the project's covered and there's not much outcrop exposure, we might do a soil survey, we may do geophysics. Really depends on the commodity you're looking for and the type of project it is. So yeah, a big part of our job is coming up with that story to sell that project to a joint venture partner. And we're not just coming up with a story, we believe in it. It's backed up by the work that we do initially and the results we get from our field work. And not every project makes it to the point of selling it to a partner. We might do the initial field work and say, yeah, what we're looking for is not really here, or we don't see a way to find a partner on this project because, it's just not going to work out.
People are the most important part of any business, and I think a company like Altius Minerals is the prime example of that mantra. And I think that Altius being based in Newfoundland and all the people involved in the company being based in Newfoundland is a huge advantage, and probably at the root of why they've been so successful. Brian Dalton is the CEO and leader of Altius Minerals and one of the co-founders of the business. His leadership, his vision for what the company was going to be, going back 24-ish years, has come to fruition, and in huge part to his ability to wade the company through the trials and tribulations of the mining sector.
We managed to hold it together through the up cycles and the down cycles. And so you can't help it if you're in this business. When its sentiment is hot and there's euphoria everywhere, it's hard not to get caught up in it. But the other side too, when it's just no matter what you do, it doesn't matter and nobody cares. It's pretty easy to get down in the dumps. So I think we all have seen so much of that, both sides of it, that somebody can always draw you back and say, yes, but remember what was like 6 months later, and if we'd only done that day when we were, we talked ourselves out of it because we were feeling depressed, but we should have because we were feeling depressed. Like there's a corporate memory of actual things we've done, but there's a corporate memory of how emotions came into decisions we made at different points as well, and it's really hard to quantify or describe it any better than that, but it comes from a group that's tight, that works together has worked together for a very long time. I don't think I could be prouder than to have been part of it for this long. I don't feel like I own it or run it or built it. I feel like I've been part of it for that long, and that's what's different, right?
I think there are multiple takeaways from the trip to Roebucks. I think first and foremost, to me, it just reinforces Altius' ability to organically generate these projects and how the future is very bright from a prospect generation point of view for Altius Minerals. Second, and this takeaway is for you. I want you to see the impact or the potential in the Prospector generator business model and how it can protect your downside, but can also lead you to something like Altius, to $1 billion market cap. And really, as an investor in the sector, this is where I think the biggest bang for your buck is, and where you have to have your ears open and listen to why this is so important and so advantageous to being successful in the sector. I was lucky enough to be a part of Altius' annual seal barbecue, which was quite exciting for me because I'd never tried seal before. Being a hunter of wild game, I'm always interested in trying new things, and seal is definitely new.
When I talk about the family type element to the business, probably another way of putting it, the anti-bureaucratic element of the business. So if something needs to get talked out, it gets talked out. If somebody is off base, no one's going to worry about the politics of pointing that out. It's just going to get said, probably over a beer and a game of darts or something too. But I think that kind of level of closeness and familiarity, yeah, it's been a differentiator for sure. A family style business, we all do our thing, but I guess maybe that's it. It's just there's no politics anywhere. There just isn't. Call each other out completely freely, laugh about it the way you would hope in a good family, right? That kind of way.
It was a great opportunity to be a part of it. They're probably much more than a company, and interacting with them, they're much more akin to a family, and it's a huge advantage. And so I think that's at the root of what Altius is, and will lead to their success in the future.